Welcome to the do-it-yourself exercise where you can test your knowledge and skills from the first lesson, and you can try to do it on your own and then check together with me. When you open this workbook, you probably will notice that you get the error informing about circular references, and because we've spoken about the errors, one of your tasks will be to find this circular reference and correct it. So in here you just hit OK and be careful with the workbook. The first exercise, we shall complete the profit and loss statement. So we need to sum up using, for example, keyboard shortcut to AutoSum. Then we have some second part of this P&L that should sum the total income with all the other positions that we have below. This is how we calculate the earnings before interest and taxes. Now we have the tax rate, which means we need to multiply by 19%, and at the end we calculate the net profit. Exercise number 2, calculate weighted average fuel consumption, and in our scenario we have 2 points of data that don't contribute equally to the final average, because some points like the 200 kilometers contribute more to the final result. First we can calculate how much fuel did we consume on both of the distances, which means we can multiply the distance by the average fuel consumption plus the second distance multiplied by the average fuel consumption. But still we need to include the weighting factor, that is the total distance, which means we will divide this sum by the sum of the distance, which means A2 and A3 cell. That is how we calculate weighted arithmetic mean of the fuel consumption for the entire route. When we now jump to the third worksheet, we can see that the circular reference warning will change its name, pointing to the cell which is supposed to be corrected. But still, we will start by correcting the worksheet from the beginning. Let's have a look on the sales, that is correct, and on the running sales. We have the running values that we've seen in one of the previous exercises, but when we tried to calculate the running sales for January, we can use the evaluate formula to check what's happening inside. You can see that some part of this equation is a text, and when we are trying to use it in this operation, we get an error. In this case, it's enough to correct the first cell and all of the other formulas will be fixed. Now it's time to have a look on the circular reference, which is in the cell B14. We can see that in general the formula is written correctly, but when you will go to the edit mode of the formula, you can see that this blue rectangle informs us that we are referencing to the initial cell itself. What shall we do? We should decrease the range, and after hitting enter we will see the correct result. In the next cell we can see the average formula, but someone who wrote this forgot about the correct full name of the average. When we correct that, you can see the right result. It is exactly the same with the max formula. That corrected can quickly bring us the right result. Formula, we see the result of 11 months, but in the table we can see 12. Why is that? Because we have an empty cell and there are few ways to correct that. First one, you can place 0 for August, and now we can see that the count operation is now calculating also the rows equal 0. The second option would be to count A, so all of the text, but this time on the months, and when you hit enter you count all of the labels in there. And the third option is to create a calculation that is just calculating the cells and not the cells with the content, and it's called rows. So if we select all of the data, we always will get 12 even if the value is empty. Please keep in mind that if you enter 0, it is treated as 0 for the average calculation, but if you remove it, it's not included in the average monthly sales. What if instead of 0 we would have a not available, which we can enforce by using NA formula? You can see that you cannot calculate sales total, thus you cannot calculate the average monthly sales, but you can calculate number of months and number of rows. In the fourth exercise, we are going to create a single formula that will translate the amounts from the euro into PLN, which means Polish zloty. So to do it with a single formula, you first need to select the whole area where the formula will be placed, and then we can start writing the formula, which means let's take the 2018 amount in euros and multiply it by the exchange rate. Then we need to remember that when the formula will be copied to the right, we will move to the year 2019, which is correct. But when we will copy the formula down, we would like to keep the rates in the second row. So we can freeze the second row, and once we hit Ctrl and Enter, we are done. In the fifth exercise, we will create a defined name in two ways. The first one will be the visible defined name, and the second one will be the hidden defined name that we can find only in the name manager. There is one additional trap in here, which means if we have the first VAT rate and we would like to apply a name to it like VAT1, you will jump out of your worksheet view somewhere to the end of the worksheet. Why is that? Because within Excel there already exists a cell that has this kind of defined name, so you cannot use this name. You can use a different name, like for example VAT_1. You cannot use spaces in here, so VAT_1 or any different name. Now when we have it, you can create the calculation B2 multiplied by VAT_1, and we can copy the formula down. The second way is to create the name with the name manager, and you can create a new name and call it VAT_2 and apply a VAT rate. When you close it, you can create the math calculation using VAT number 2. If this would be a real-life scenario, we could also apply the rounding operation, because VAT amount should have maximally 2 digits, so we can create a rounding operation and format the data to be consistent in the cell.